Hello everyone. Let's talk about where clause. We have seen a few examples before. Let's talk about it in more detail. So where clause is filtering the data by a condition. And condition can be something is bigger than 0 or something is equal to some value, or it can be one thing and another thing. So basically a condition is a Boolean expression. It does look slightly different than in Python or in Java, but the idea is exactly the same. Comparison operators are still the same, except for not equal to is less or more. So this kind of sign. All right. So here are some examples where vendor state is equal to Iowa, where some expression, which we previously called balance due, is bigger than 0. And we can compare strings that will keep only the strings that begin from A to L and not M. So that's how we compare strings. And also we can compare dates, and when you do that, make sure that your invoice date is actually in datetime format, except for instead of just being a string. So the highlighted part has to be in datetime format. All right, so let us play with it and actually use the studio. So I created like top 1,000 of every top 1,000 rows, all columns. This is auto-generated, of course, and I'm going to look here and come up with something fun. So where vendor state is not equal to California. It has to be capitalized. It has to fit exactly, unless you use another command. And let's run it. So California is removed from all the rows with California are removed. So you can see that there is a lot less rows that there should be in unfiltered vendors table. If I remember, in the unfiltered vendors table, there was like 120 plus, judging by this vendor ID. And now some of them are skipped. All right, so let's comment this out and come up with something else. Where vendor phone is not now. So where vendor phone is not now. So I removed all the entries where vendor phone was now. And notice that I don't do equal. So not equal. I cannot do that. Let's try to say vendor phone is not equal to now. And the result is nothing. This is incorrect. Now is not equal to now even. So don't use equality to with now. So when you are using now, use is not now or is now. So where is it now? Let's see. This is where it is now. Okay. So you can make expressions involving date or time. So here there are no dates. We would have to go to another table with invoices. So let's try to play with invoices. Okay, so no, we don't want to save it. And I want invoice dates. For example, invoice dates invoice due dates bigger than 01 26 16 2016. And it's a matter of matching the pattern. I'm going to double check how they enter it. So they have a very similar format, but not exactly the same. So let's see if it is able to process this format. Oh yes, it is. So our invoice due dates start after January 26th of 2016. And we can see that order by invoice due date. Okay. So invoice due date, and if you are annoyed with that sort of thing, we can always correct it real quick. Design query in editor, and here we are. It should be exactly the same, only nicer done. So the first invoice due date starts at 31st of January. Okay. So this is how you do where conditions, and of course you can do multiple where conditions using AND. So there is AND invoice date. Invoice date is no, actually invoice total. Total should be greater than, let's make it bigger than $100. We'll see. So you notice this default parenthesis. I can put parentheses or not. In this particular case, it doesn't matter. Here is with parentheses. And now I filtered my invoices. Invoice total should be bigger than 100 everywhere. And for small tables, you can, of course, check it by scrolling the table through the table. But in reality, for big data, of course, you cannot scroll through the entire data. That's insane. Okay. So moving on. So this is conditions with AND, conditions with OR. Remember the difference between the two. So for an OR statement to be true, it's enough one of the operands to be true. So either on the left or on the right is true, then the whole thing is true. And over here, it's necessary for this one to be true and the other one to be true as well, for the AND statement to be true. So they definitely return different results. Remember your Boolean logic, whether you learned that in Python only or in a bunch of other places. So remember the meaning of OR, AND. All right, so default order of precedence. Not is the highest, and is the second, or is the third. And in any case, parentheses can always clarify or modify it altogether. The full order of precedence can be found online. So Google SQL condition order of precedence. All right, so here is one compound condition. Invoice date is at least that, or invoice total is bigger than 500. This is in parentheses, so this is evaluated first. One of these two conditions have to be true. And also the second condition must be true for this row to be retrieved. So it only takes when balance due, that is the meaning of the highlighted expression, is positive. Only those rows are selected. But on top of that, one of these two conditions have to be true. Either invoice total is bigger than 500, or the invoice date is bigger than 01/01/2016. And you can track it and make sure that the returned rows actually satisfy this condition. maybe you know what? I'm going to copy paste it and I'm going to try it myself. So this was about invoices. Let's do 1000 rows and double check. What do we have? Actually, we don't have to do 1000 rows. We can just do what we need to do here. Just copy paste that. And maybe I'll modify just for fun. I'm going to modify it a little bit. Incorrect. Oops, it's only where. So I did not copy the whole select statement. Select from invoices and what are we selecting? Invoice date, comma, invoice total, and there was something else to select. Invoice number, invoice date, and yeah, and balance due. Invoice number, and this thing as balance due. All right, let's run it now. Okay, so first of all, let's fit the whole thing in. We're selecting certain rows and we are creating a calculated row and calling it balance due. Here it is from invoices, but we are also filtering. Invoice date has to be February or later. Here it is, February or later. Invoice total has to be bigger than 500. Or invoice total has to be bigger than 100. So one of these two things have to be true. For example, for this one, invoice total is not bigger than 500. But the invoice date is February or later. And I guess actually for all of them, it's February or later. So maybe I'll change it again. 15th. So that will change our selection. So either invoice date has to be above this number or the invoice total. So we have here invoice total not bigger than 500, so the date has to be right. And over here, the date, the invoice total is large, but also the date is okay. And everywhere through this, we see that the, let's try 24th. So I'm manufacturing an example that I want to see. So right now, the date is before invoice date, but the invoice total is above 500. So this part of the Boolean condition is true because it's an OR condition, but the second one has to be true also. Balance due have to be bigger than 0. So that's how it is retrieved. And so for this 3, the total has to be bigger than 500 because they failed the date condition. Over here we satisfy the date condition, but the total is small. So this is still satisfied, as well as balance due is bigger than 0. So for AND condition, both have to be true. This one have to be true, and this one has to be true. And for OR condition, the highlighted part, it's to be true, it's enough for one of them to be true. All right, So that was a nice example. We can also use the in keyword to show that, for example, vendor state is not in this list of states if we want to exclude them for some reason. And we can use in with a select statement. So we are selecting vendor IDs satisfying this condition, certain day. And we can use that the result of this select statement as a list of values, provided that it only has one column. So let's try that. We need to work with vendor IDs. So here is all vendor IDs. I'm filtering now with the condition, and let's see if anything satisfies that condition. Nothing. Interesting. Let's briefly get rid of it. Run, and I'm running the wrong vendor ID from invoices. I need to look at invoices. I need to look at invoices back, figure out the date that I want, 2015, 12/13. 12/13. Here it is. We found that one. So this is the vendor information of a vendor who had an invoice on this day. And we knew it's right because we had an invoice on that day. I basically grabbed the date from here. All right. So notice that here we used data from another table. This is a very interesting example. First time you used data, retrieved data from invoices and used it in vendors. All right, there will be a lot more of that coming, maybe by different means. All right, so we can use not, we have seen an example like that, and we can use a between phrase. So between is for range of values, and you can see how it works, for example, with dates, where invoice date is between these two dates. And it can also work for numeric values as well.